But if you look at the market, even over, if you roll back in the last 5-10 years, there are some stocks that have always delivered value over time. If you look back, consistent dividend, consistent bonus. So it is also trying to identify, work with your stockbrokers, try to identify stocks that are fundamentally strong. Though in terms of return, they may not be as much as some of those stocks that you speculate on. You can see a stock gain 100%, but because as a result of, it can be acquisition, it can be some reasons that are not majorly fundamentally driven, some of those stocks may move significantly higher than those stocks that have strong fundamentals. But if you are consistent in terms of your investment policy, consistent in terms of understanding fundamentals before you invest, then you will be able to reduce and minimize your risk, diversify your portfolio across sectors. Some of all those things are things that investors need to understand. Then I would also like to discuss in terms of the regulators. I know some things some process are being done in terms of onboarding clients or onboarding investors to the capital markets. With the advent of the BVN now that you have, with the registered phone numbers that you also have, the requirement in terms of KYC should also be reviewed. So we can't be working with policies that maybe in the last 5-6 years, when there was no BVN, there was no registration of SIM, no phone number to track an individual. We can't still be using that law or that policy to onboard clients. So when they see that that process is very cumbersome, then you won't be able to get as much clients as possible. When you look at the unique clearinghouse number that we have, it's still less than 4 million shareholders that are currently registered on the stock exchange. And when you also drill down to look at those that are active, I think it's around 100,000 active clients. So when you look at it, for most rights issue that you're having, you're selling to the same pocket of shareholders, except you get strategic investors to absorb a majority of your shares even before coming out for the offer. So it's something that even on the part of the regulator, they need to also speed up their work in terms of onboarding clients. With your BVN, with your phone number registered, you should be able to have your CSS account at a certain threshold.
Deji, we have a conversation. We thank our viewers for joining the conversation on social media, on Twitter. Of course, one of our viewers said Mr. Ebo has working channels, should get on board of NSC. Well, that's out there for the directors to decide. I'm just an employee here when we should get on board of the stock exchange. But of course, we have that's from Abdul Wahid, one of our viewers. And Chinedu Madiebo says, well, activities in our market determines the potential of companies to raise capital. And that's speaking to what you've just said. But again, look at what the vice president says yesterday about agriculture. We have two big companies, or blue chips, if you want to call it, the big brother, in the agriculture market, a part of our market. FTN cocoa processing is neither here nor there. I'm sure we have less than 10 in that particular space, in the agro-allied. Yeah. Now, we have an entire big value chain where Olam, where Dangote, where Flour Mills is playing. They're all moving into the north central and the northern part of the country doing business. Do you see something here that we want to build an agro-processing companies, build agro-allied, yet nobody is saying, how do we get them onto a commodities exchange, or get them to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, or get them to the NESD OTC?
Yes, I think currently, based on the last Capital Market Committee meeting, they are also the committee in charge of commodity, trying to revamp the commodity, Abuja Commodity Exchange, also trying to see how they work with the federal government to ensuring that in terms of activities, so if federal government can, federal government is trying to see how they will come up with the reserves for food crops and cash crops. So if they are able to buy through the commodity exchange, that will help create some form of activity and help create some form of platform. So I feel it's just more collaboration that I think we need to have between the capital market operators as well as the government, because you cannot dissociate. The government cannot just be working in isolation, and while you expect that the capital market will grow. Most of these companies, the agri-companies that you have highlighted across the value chains, most of them will require capital. Rather than use debt or even use foreign loan, multilateral loans to grow your business, long-term capital available. And for even the average investor, once you are sure, when you tell a good story, you are sure in terms of corporate governance, you are sure in terms of the value that this company will deliver to shareholders, I think even the average investor will also like to put his or her money in that space.
Because the palm oil story and the ban on 41 items, as far as the palm oil side, looks like an interesting and sweet story.
Yes, yes.
And I'm sure you are the CEO of a brokerage firms. You hear folks talk about these two agri companies, Fiscal and Okomo Oil. And we had about 5 of them before 10, 20 years ago. We had Okitipupa Oil Palm, we had a few more others there, and suddenly they went down to just about 2. Now, we're talking about rice, we're talking about millet, we're talking about wheat, and we need to get companies within this space, whether from Jigawa or Kebbi or from Zamfara State or whatever, or in Benue State, to also onboard either straight to the NSE or to the unlisted exchange at the NESD.
No, interesting. That takes us back to government policy, for government to see how critical their policy formation is. For FTN Cocoa, then that listed, I think, around 2008 when the market was booming. You mentioned the Okitipupa. But because of the policy that were not favorable, so when you look at in terms of competition, when they're selling their produce, who are they selling to? What are the quality of this produce? Can they export? For most companies that have grown significantly in other markets, when you look at South Africa, you even see the MTN, their export-led growth that has helped them to develop significantly. You see even ShopRite, that in terms of ShopRite is listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, but because it's been able to expand and compete globally, that has helped in terms of growth of the company in the domestic country. So government needs to see how, in terms of the quality, packaging, policies around these things are also very key. You mentioned...
And aspects to investment, trade, and industries ministry, isn't it? Because they are the ones where you have Standard Organization of Nigeria, you have the NEPC, you have all the export processing zones, all under the Okechukwu and Elama's ministry.
Yes, I think they need to also, I know they are doing a lot, but they need to take their time and review. Some of these policies may not be applicable to current situations. Some of those policies have been formulated 5, 10 years ago. So in line with current reality, they need to review some of these policies if we really want to compete favorably globally, and most of these companies are not able to compete. Okomu Oil, Presco that you just mentioned, as a result of the ban, most of the companies had to look inwards and in terms of patronizing some of these companies, and we can see the impact on their books.
I'm sorry to cut in there. We're going to have another conversation some other day. Thank you very much for this extensive one.